Black. Me, I suppose. But in all seriousness, am I? Do you think I am? Do I think I am? You see, I've been sat here and I've been thinking, hardly thinking. Maybe stressing is the word I'm looking for. I don't really know. And I'm having a bit of an identity crisis, but I'm sure you'll understand. It's a difficult question, but sometimes I feel like it shouldn't be, but it is, at least for me. See, growing up mixed gives you a particular worldview, where you are, by a white community, perceived as black, and by the black community, perceived as not quite black. It leaves you floating in this weird grey area of non-existence. My parents told me a story. I must have been 4. I'd just been with 2 of my friends, one black and one white. And when I spoke to my parents, I said, Lucas é tudo branco, e Marcel é tudo preto, e eu sou tudo branco e tudo preto. This was when I lived in Brazil, so naturally Portuguese. But I said that my friend Lucas was all white, and I said that my friend Marcel was all black. And I was all black and all white. And it got me thinking. I perceived my racial difference from such a young age. But it seemed I was quite pleased with my conclusion at that age. So why now do I spend so long fighting my own identity? I like the sentiment, all black, all white, not half of anything. So I'm not even black British, which adds a spanner in the works where you feel connected to a group, but there's also a difference you have to recognise, or you just end up homogenising black culture. You get trapped in this loop of not feeling black enough with black people and not feeling white enough with white people. And you look around, and there's no one who looks exactly like you, and it's exhausting. To be stuck between identities, and it plagues your mind. And most of the time, the people around you don't notice, or don't care, nor would they say anything. But it doesn't stop you feeling insecure, unstable, unwanted. And it's only through going to understand myself that I can stand here and talk about it. But my work isn't done. There's still a lot I need to address and figure out, but I feel closer to that goal than before. And you'd call me lucky for escaping the depths of disadvantage that I found in this country, but coming from the third world, I've seen poverty, but I've never seen poverty compounded in such wealth. It blew my mind that a country with so much potential could fall so short. And this is the issue I realised. Having not experienced that life has marked me as less black, because I didn't struggle in that way. I'm not black. It overlooks that black experience as more than where you grew up, because regardless of your upbringing, in the eyes of white dominance, like Eckelberg over Queens, the blue eyes cast judgment. There's a plague within our community, an intrinsic racism that forces ourselves into an incessant self-hatred from which we can't break free. It's unending. The perception of ourselves is flawed, compounded by a system too far gone. There's no response that's uncriticised, all of our pain is scrutinised. There's no unification, because to be one is to be against the society that delivers our alienation. So where do I stand? A half between 2 identities. The oppressor and the oppressed is me, but it doesn't make a difference because it's my complexion they see. The decision was made for me. Would I change it given the chance? No, of course not. But it doesn't stop me questioning at what point it was a choice. Was it decided for me when I first opened my brown eyes, saw my brown skin, and heard that brown slur? Maybe. It doesn't stop me being proud. I love my skin and everything it represents, and I'd hate to think that I have to repent for a beautiful identity. But you see, the blacker the berry, the sweeter the juice. They set their hunting dogs loose, the blacker the berry, the worse the abuse. The degradation of an entire generation, and I will never live to that expectation of those before me, because reformation is behind me. A memory of a fight once fought, a freedom once bought, a lesson once taught. And I'm stood here, surely as a sign of the UK's meritocracy, but as a discrepancy you can only see when you look around the room, around the theatre, around the campus, because an exception does not prove the rule. The careful selection of one of the good ones as their tool, so it's me standing here telling you this, making me the fool. It's ironic to look up to Othello, the product of the white bourgeoisie, and you can't feel safe, you can't feel free or safe because the eyes cast judgment in seconds. And I reckon that's not a genuine way to separate yourself from these notions, and you seek up searching for fulfillment where it won't find you. You spend so much time on a course to defend what you feel is right, but you have to pause every night to address the way you take on this fight as you fall into their jaws. You look for the light, but you're barred. He had a dream, and we woke up. In a world, while better than the last, was fast to show us that our subjugation was not over, we were just in the next stage. The pages of those lost getting longer, their drive getting stronger to destroy us and all we represent. The irony that they pretend to repent for actions they don't even regret. The only regret being that we won't forget or let them get away with the disrespect. It's these isms creating schisms between us, because if you don't label yourself first, they'll label for you. They'll identify and clarify to you who you are, who you will be, and what you can and can't see. But you need to resist. Fight back, because right is the language of the unheard, and their words carry weight, because the longer you wait, the heavier they will come down on you like a freight. And as an educator, I see it from the start. And I realize we're too far gone to entrench in a system that teaches wrong perspectives of the world because it's us versus them. And I've gone over the same points, repeating myself, but of course I have to stand here and beat the dead horse because the person who shot it won't listen. And with the gun turned on me, my tears will glisten as my last rebellion. There are too many of us pushing that boulder up the hill, but some of us make it to the top, just to turn and kick the boulder down on those still climbing. The goal is not to be the prison guard, falling into that dark hole where you lose your own direction, you ignore reflection, and you see yourself as the exception, and you impose the rules on those after you. But only in darkness can I harness the true power of my words, because now it isn't what you saw, but what you heard. The sound that can only compound now the true meaning of my plea, because in darkness I'm finally free of your judgment and expectation. No fulfillment or mediation is expected from me, because now I'm a voice who's free. Invasion or invitation. We didn't come here. We were brought here, invited here, forced here. But when we set up shop and get comfy, suddenly we're the invader. It's something that's always confused me about the current situation of the country. It's like the confusion with the Windrush. They were brought to work and carry England out of the post-war destruction, and their contributions quickly forgotten once the job was done. They were literally British citizens at the time. And this country's always had a strange perception of their own heritage, as though being English exists outside of the influence of European migration, invasion, and colonization. I mean, think about it. We have a German royal family, Norman ruling class, Greek patron saint, Roman Middle Eastern religion, Latin alphabet, multi-ethnic identity, globe-spanning empire, but reject the idea of migration into the country. Britain is a product of migration, but people get so bogged down in the ideas of soil and blood. And don't get me wrong, it's good to be proud of where you're from, and to build an identity as a country is valuable culturally, but to reject the possibility of evolution through immigration is idiosyncratic. Because we're at this point, thanks to immigration, that your national dish is fucking curry. And what's worse is the attitude that it's only towards immigrants and not the English people who decide that they like to find a new life elsewhere. You give them a lovely title and cheer their willingness to leave and uphold the British values around the world. So it'd be important for me to clarify my own position. I am an immigrant, first generation, but I have integrated well, which is an awful way to say that I made this country my home, but with the rhetoric of current politics, it is unfortunately what I would be described as. See, both my parents and my brother are also in this category, and now living here for 15 years, I don't feel we fit the bill for the scary immigrant. And it's ironic that us coming to you makes us unwelcome, but you coming to us makes you an expat. A brave soul facing the frontier of the unknown world on behalf of the crown. It's an issue of perception and understanding, and we're not here to steal. It's not really our style. But in the UK, we've become too obsessed with distractions, trivial stories, and non-issues that serve to simply keep the wool over our eyes. And only now has that wool started to burn. Only now can people see the reality of the human rights violations that the UK commit to keep them out. As though their presence here was not that long ago asked for, but it's benefited the country for decades. But now the rules have changed. To deny the ebbs and flows of immigration forgets that we humans are nomadic, and our ability to move, build, grow wherever we choose is what gives us our uniqueness as a species. We were meant to cross borders and merge. We were always meant to. And the further you look, the more you see it. German royal family, Norman ruling elite, Greek patriot saint, Roman Middle Eastern religion, Latin alphabet, multi-ethnic identity, globe-spanning empire. We're a product of our intertwined roots, and to sever them is to undo who we are. Taxation without representation is a defamation on the work, the hours given to your produce that you'll turn to use and reduce the value of those who sweat and paid for your luxury. You can calculate this value, deliberate on it, just to imitate compassion when it suits you well, but not a moment's thought given to the thousands who fell at the knees of your empire, and you punish them for that fire you lit within them to oppose your rule and no longer be used as your tool. It's the same story, and it isn't a good one. Not a story to be proud of, not a story to tell your children. But you know that full well since you're writing the history books. And you're writing the history books. And you'll never break out of your shell. Using expat as some wonky label to pat yourself on the back for your empire's exploitation, but a brown expat, you'd laugh at that. The terrifying fact that we might want our land back. Because you didn't like to share, and we see your lack of care and the hundreds who die in hope of a life owed to them by your tyranny. But you reject them and lie to your own people to convince a country of migrants that the very same migrants are here. Make them wince at the idea of them existing. Because it's only a fair deal when you benefit and you don't feel threatened by the real implications of your discrimination. As the wind rushes past you, you're forsaken your past because at last it's come to bargain. But you cast judgment from your ivory tower of shame, so fast to turn your back and sink their masts. The unprecedented cruelty of a government who have not yet repented for their crimes that are clear as the sun on your shores. And I meant it when I called you out, because with no humanitarian cause, you make policy without pause to resize the implications of the laws you govern with, and iron fists turn to the list you see fit to keep out, and the list only including those you can't exploit further. But rather than heal the scars, you take your time to cut new wounds, so you can feel the satisfaction of something unreal, but your delusion of thinking that this is some form of solution will be the end of you. It will be your downfall, the conclusion delivered by the hand of revolution. Our support for war-torn refugees is commendable. It would be defendable if it wasn't for the fact that we let them in droves, providing that they're white and line the roads of a church. No other denomination, because our fear fed by misinformation of the realities of immigration will be the end of this nation. As there is no us in them. And when we realise that, I hope we'll be able to go back on our self-imposed isolation. And some of us immigrants approve this treatment. How can you remove the privilege your family was given from someone else's once an act so selfless you've manipulated to be selfish? There's a dissonance with the incessance that there isn't a real distance in our differences because it's dismissive to reality. So when I tell you this, I'm being explicit because we have to resist it, or we succumb to it. So I wanted this to be reflective, but I know that their attention is selective, and only they seem to profit from the profit that we bring in, taken out of the profit that we deserve. They have no perspective because they reject us as a collective, to hiding our contribution is their only objective. There seems to always be an unreasonable amount of chaos around the world, all the time, and it's overwhelming, really. But I used to think there was some kind of honor or pride in being aware of everything happening at once, eyes glued to the news, ready to discuss, debate, or argue about problems that were quite literally on the other side of the world. And by no means am I trying to say that you shouldn't be well informed and understanding of the world, but I think that we forget that the impact this has on us as individuals. where being so aware of everything all the time is just destructive. Because, like the real world, there's a million and one things going on in your head all the time, and to overload yourself with more emotion than your brain can really deal with is dangerous. And it got me thinking that, realistically, what can your brain deal with? Because we have this idea of a limitless mind, which can be true, but also the capacity we have for dealing with negativity isn't limitless. And that's okay. The idea of being okay, not good or bad, just not worried, has been kind of a focus of my thinking. I found that in the last 2 years, I've been turning the lens inwards and rummaging around, seeing what I find. And as a man, I found a lot of dust, cobwebs, and boxes with scary labels on them. So let's open some. It's weird that not knowing who you want to be is this age-old question that you fight and toil against yourself just to reveal the parts of you that are worth sparing. It's terrifying that there's no guidance or rules or right or wrong, there's just you. So I made this character a while back, and for the longest time I thought it was about someone else. You know, the mannerisms, the way they're presented. It was this guy at the pub I worked at, one of the kindest and funniest people I'd met. He was the highlight of a shift. But there was always this sadness in his eyes that I couldn't figure out. And it confused me how he was able to make a room glow and still carry that weight in his eyes. So I called him the Smiler. And I started writing poems about this character. But the more I wrote, the more I realized that he wasn't the only smiler. And the more I wrote, the more I saw me. I rejected this, of course, because I am fine. But it dawned on me that we're all fine, us smilers. We're never not fine. And that's weird. Really weird. So fine is the new bad, good the new fine, and bad's, well, shit, I suppose. And mental health's always been a weird point for me, because for some reason I feel like I should be an expert in how to manage it. And despite my whole life being a process of denying and ignoring it, pretending it wasn't there, and only now am I able to try and understand it. So I've not got any answers, but I'm closer than I think I have been in a long time, maybe. So I've always loved this analogy, and I can't remember who told me, but our mental health is like a river flowing through your mind, a constant stream of consciousness, every thought, worry, concern, passing through in a constant flow. And the river changes, it grows and shrinks, it rages and it calms. Sometimes the banks burst, and sometimes it harmonizes. And too many people think they can control it, stop it, build a dam and hold this reservoir of emotion. But the more you hold it back, the stronger it will be when it finally bursts, because it will. So the end point is never to try and hold it back or to try and change it, but learn the current and accept that when a rainy season comes, the water will be deeper. You just need to stay afloat, because it'll always find its way to its destination. You're part of its journey, and its path is you. So let it flow through you. Acknowledge it, love it, and soak in it, because it will never stop running, and you're the one who needs to stop running from its shores. I need you to help me help you help me, because I'm helpless at helping the one person who needs help, me. And I thought it'd be so easy to explain and explore, but the more I look, the less I find, and I pine after some feeling of hope that I don't know how long I can cope. So we all disappear like breath in a mirror. We forget who you used to be, but that image is so fleeting, and I'm tired of hearing my heart beating so loud in my mind, unable to hear the rhythm and be kind to me. A moment you find yourself alone, where your thoughts are looking back at you in the black screen of your phone, where the darkness takes over you because you can't pay back that loan of happiness you borrowed. And I'm not sure what I see, because I want to feel well, not have this ringing bell inside of my head every time I look down at that well where I wish I just fell. Will we be on? Who could I be? Was it not from my ADHD, but your medication will help me just by stopping the condition that is me? It may seem like you won't be fine, but when spring has sprung and you'll finally see the sunshine, Our mental health is like the weather, fluctuating between worse and better, predictably unpredictable because the forecast won't last with the ever-changing day, and just like a storm, it passes over your head and through your mind. I'm balancing between distraction and acknowledgement because the knowledge I need to figure out where I am has faded into abstraction. I can't prioritize nor realize where I should be, who I want to be, or who I will be. Relying on marble gold, now I'm feeling old, and the way they got a hold of me because it's almost embarrassing to think I need a stimulant to stimulate my mood, but it's just to stipulate that it digs through me and takes hold. Do you ever get this feeling that you're relying on a pill? I'm not speaking metaphorically, I wish I could say medically, but I engage recreationally. And it's not a problem until your reliance forms a defiance within your own will, and I can't reach that thrill until I find a way out, I'm trapped. It feels so relevant, as though some revenant would have to come and tell me so, because the reliance is so prevalent, and I always thought that my engagement was benevolent, but now it's become so evident that I'm irreverent to my own being. I have these reoccurring dreams where I'm separated from the self. A form of escapism manufactured by my own mind to free myself of the guilt and pains that I refuse to acknowledge. At least in sleep, I find peace, a release. As this ridiculous male fragility that has shattered me, and like pieces of glass, I cut those who try and pick up the pieces. It's no thesis, I'm not fearless. And I'm trapped in the creases of an identity I was molded into, and now you behold the product of the folds and tears they made, and you see the hold they have on me because it's gold dust to be free of insecurity. And my inner child is cold from being shut out for so long, and what if I grow old and never let him back in? So no matter what I'm told, I won't let them win. But it isn't all so dire, because once you focus on that fire within yourself, you'll find you tire trying to keep breathing the solution for leading yourself from that dark well you fell in so long ago. Crawling out to find your peace and whatever pieces you bring with you. We are not alone, nor are we stuck. While we have to atone, punishing yourself endlessly will only leave you incessantly hating yourself. And we don't deserve that. That's a fact that we come to terms with, and I never ask you to forget, but not to regret that you have to remember who you were to become who you want to be. And I'll say this now, faced with these facts. A thank you to those who came before, and a map for those who come after.
And they're all crying across the ocean, and they're crying across the land, and then will till we all come apart.
I was going to do a Q&A, but I need a little bit of breathing time. But please grab me at any point if you have any questions about the scripts, about the thinking, about anything, because I'd love to talk. I wanted to start a conversation with this piece, and this wouldn't have ever existed had it not been for the incredible help and work from my team, from Demi, my dramaturg, Laura, my brilliant producer, James on lights, and Katie, my marketing manager. All of these people influenced me so much to make this a reality. And so did you guys, all the people I've met and known for 4 odd years, all my friends and family. This is a combination of a lot of years of thinking. And it's not done, O is not finished, but now hopefully I can walk alongside O. Thank you.